Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about my journey and others that I've spoken to recently about the journey of leadership to first-time parent to working parent. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in our industry at the moment, and part of that is obviously women in leadership roles. So I myself am a new mum. I've been back in the workforce for 5 months. Attempting to work part-time. That's definitely an interesting journey and definitely a large juggle. But I feel like I have a unique opportunity as one of the very few women in IT in Melbourne to talk about this journey and to talk about how you guys as the fellow leadership of our industry can help make this a little bit easier and to help hopefully make sure that more women A, stay in our industry and B, come back to work from having children. So just as a show of hands, who in the room has kids? Great. And who in the room carried a child and gave birth to a child? There are 3, including me, that's 4. So as you can tell, we do have a challenge. Having a baby in a leadership role isn't the easiest thing. In fact, it was much harder than I ever anticipated it being. So I've started to talk about my journey since coming back to work, and it's surprising how many people want to talk about this, but don't have a forum to talk about it and are really scared, nervous, anxious to talk about it. So hopefully I can start the trend and we can make this a little bit easier. It's not really big things that need to change, it's lots of little things. These things don't need large HR policy changes, they don't need lots of thought and documentation. It's the small things that you guys as leaders can do and to coach and mentor your leadership team to make this a bit easier. This is all about humans, real life, and emotions. So the talk I'm going to do is broken up into 4 sections. Pre-pregnancy, because that's a thing we don't talk about. Being pregnant, being on mat leave or parental leave if you're a dad, and coming back to work. So let's kick off with pre-pregnancy. Anxiety. This is a topic that people don't like to talk about, but it's the reality of women who are thinking about having children. Many of you are working with women that are coming up the ranks. I guarantee you there's anxiety in how they're thinking about becoming a mum. I myself, and many others I know, had to seek professional assistance from a counsellor to get myself over the line to have a child. Not because I was worried about being a mum, it's because I was worried about what would happen to me as a professional in a male-dominated industry. Anxiety is referred to in our culture and society as a mental health condition, but really it's about emotional health. A lot of people, for many reasons, have anxiety. And they don't seek help because it's a mental health condition, and that's a really bad word in our society. It affects people's insurance premiums, it's expensive. These things, in my opinion, have to change, and we have to start talking about the fact that these things are part of life. You come to work for a little bit, but that's not your entire life. It's a part of who you are as a human. Education. So there's very little education out there about what it's like to become a working mum or a working parent. Part of that is us starting to talk about it and some of us being a bit brave to do that. But what can your companies do to help lift the lid on this? How can you get your colleagues talking about it? How can you yourself talk about your personal journey that may not have been as smooth sailing as everybody around you thinks it was? Financial planning. So a big part of female leaders in this organisation is most of us are the main income earner for our families. So you guys as males, when you have a baby, you can take a couple of weeks off work, maybe some a couple of months, but we have to take at least 6 months off work, some less, but most women take on average about 6 months off work, and being the main income earner of your family, that takes a pretty big hit on your budget. So also most women in these leadership roles earn a certain amount that the government doesn't help you with anything, no money, nothing. So you have to think about this in advance. I started planning financially to have a child 2 years before I even started to try and have a baby. So These are all the things that are on the women that you're working around. They're on their minds. It's on their minds, and we need to start talking about it because they need someone to talk to. And we want to try and make sure that women can take on leadership roles and still go through all of these things. IVF. You'll be surprised how many people around you are going through IVF. It's very common this day and age. Yes? Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking a question. As we all have children a little bit later in life, this is actually more real than most people realise. It's fraught with fear, it's fraught with emotion, it's lonely. Most people going through IVF in the workforce are very disconnected from their employment because all that's on their mind is the fact that they're going through IVF. It's something that most leaders struggle to counter when someone says to you, one of your team members says, "Oh, I'm going through IVF." Just have to think about how would you respond to that. Would you even know what to say? Would you know how to help them? Probably not. So how can we do some education in our industry to try and make this a little bit safer for people to talk about? I'm going to read you a little story from someone in our industry today, very well known, who's currently going through IVF, just to kind of explain the impact this has. It's interesting that all the flexible working features and encouragement around the journey are all for post-pregnancy. Like it happens by magic, and then you get all these amazing benefits and support in the wonderful journey of parenthood. This is a minimal consideration for life before being pregnant. Then you decide to start trying. If you're lucky enough, something happens, and you head down the path that's neatly laid out as a normal pregnancy. What happens when you miscarry? The grief gets hidden away, and you walk through the doors at work each day like nothing's happened. As a female, I'm really conscious about staying strong and staying connected, working hard to make sure I can climb the ladder. So I need to keep it together. I wasn't even able to use my bereavement leave when I had a miscarriage, but yet my child died. Then we had to head down the path of fertility treatment, which you don't talk about because it's a roller coaster of emotions. You worry about the impacts of work, you worry about how your peers will respond. Then you've got to take these random days off work for medical procedures, hormone injections, and your hormones are going crazy. If you're lucky, you get to move down the path of pregnancy and hope that it's normal, hope that you don't miscarry again, and have to start all over again like nothing's happened. Or you can try, and try again, each time, costing you emotions, not to mention the $10,000 every time. Every round's another round of grief that you bury and pretend everything is okay, but in reality, it's all you're thinking about. And every waking minute while you're at work, you're thinking about it, but no one around you has any idea. And if it ends up like me, not me, this person, the grief bubbles away in the background. Meanwhile, working and not letting it impact your results and your team, but in reality it does. And most of the time, it's immediately considered as you not being able to handle the pressures of your job. I didn't feel safe to share any of this with my manager or my colleague due to the fear of treating me differently and them not understanding what I was going through. I didn't want to explain it over and over and over again. And then there's the adoption process and the judgment I experienced when I did attempt to share this with two of my colleagues. So this is just one person of many going through this around you, and people don't currently feel safe to talk about this. So what are some other things we can think about? A buddy program. There's people in your organisation who are planning to have a family. It's a fact of life. How can you think about getting a buddy program up and going in a confidential manner where people can feel safe to talk about it, because there are people going through this right around you today. What about buying some extra annual leave? A lot of companies these days have policies to buy extra annual leave, but it's pretty much normally capped at 20 days. For someone who's considering a family, who especially is a female, who is the main income earner for the family, is this an option that you could consider within your company? We have to try and move this industry to allow us to be safe to talk about these things. It's not easy, but I really believe, and the many people I've spoken to since coming back to work feel like their journey would have been much easier had they been able to talk to somebody. So as I mentioned, we've got to start talking about it. Okay, so then for those that are lucky enough, people fall pregnant. And then a whole new roller coaster starts. It's a secret. For the first 12 weeks, no one knows about it. You're excited, you're happy, you're scared, you're nervous, but no one knows about it. I myself would have loved to have shared it with my team, but I was really conscious. How would they respond? Would they treat me differently? Would I be wrapped around with cotton wool? What if I lost the baby? How would they handle the grief of me losing the child? All of those emotions exist within all the women that are going through this today. Not to mention the dads. Let's not forget the dads going through this. Sickness. Some people get really, really sick. I was one of those people, severe morning sickness, severe all-day sickness. Some of the things that go through your mind when you're going through pregnancy and being this sick, this is on top of your job as a leader. So most women are looking after multiple teams. Some of the things they're thinking about on top of their normal day. I've got to get to a meeting room first so I can sit by the door so that if I need to run out to be sick, I can get out of the room without anything happening in the room, right? This is something that is on people's minds. I can't go anywhere near the kitchen at lunchtime because the smells are going to make me sick. But then people are saying, oh, you don't want to socialise with your team. No, I really do, but I really can't be in that kitchen because it's not going to be pleasant for anyone. Women normally bring multiple changes of clothes to work. Getting to and from work is a challenge. Those with really bad morning sickness can't go on the train, don't like motion, so getting to work is a real challenge. Those that make it to work, it's a pretty big achievement. For me, for the first 12 weeks, all I could eat was bananas. I get to work and I've left the bananas at home. My God, what am I going to eat all day? I'm just going to be sick, more sick. I've got to go find some bananas, right? Like for other people, it's chips or chocolate or whatever it is. But for me, some days without those bananas, they weren't good days. And all the team events that we hold to ensure our culture and all our teams are happy, most of them revolve around food. So pizzas, going out for burgers and chips, or going out for a drink at the pub. All these things that pregnant women suffering from severe morning sickness can't do. Restructures are a fact of life in our industry. But someone who's pregnant and you announce a restructure, do you spend more time with them to talk through this? It's way more emotional for someone who's about to go on a long period of time off work, that the work that they're coming back to is probably going to change. So think about how you could spend a little bit more time with someone going through this. Interviewing. We really want to encourage women not to put their careers on hold, but going through an interview when you're heavily pregnant and your emotions are charged and you're suffering from severe morning sickness, that's a lot. So how do we make that environment a little bit easier? How do we coach the people that are doing the interview to adapt their interview techniques to make it a little bit easier for people to be successful in that environment? Some women might end up in tears in the interview. How would you as an interviewer cope with that? How would your team cope with that? Unconscious bias training is a really good thing that's been happening in our industry. Typically though, it's a 4-hour workshop. People leave it and nothing happens. You'll be very surprised if I told you some of the real stories of things that were said to me during my pregnancy at work. It might be 2018, but didn't feel like it. So I think continuing to talk about these things and being honest about the truth about what happens in the workforce when you're pregnant is really important. Expecting parents, let's have a support group for them. It's not just the mums. What about the dads? Their wife's about to go through, their wife's about to go through a pretty intense time giving birth and becoming a new mum. What about the dads? Like, it's scary. How do the dads in our environment have someone to talk to? So think about some networking groups. Flexible working. Most companies these days haven't, but does it really work? Does flexible working just mean working from home? It doesn't. It means working on the train, not having to use your leave for your appointments that you and your partner want to go to together. I'm surprised at how many stories I'm hearing about companies that require people to use their annual leave to go to an appointment for a scan. Like in this day and age, we've got to be better and we've got to be more creative about flexible working. Fear, it's real. Fear of being forgotten when you go on mat leave, fear of being left out, fear of going backwards in your career. I think talking about this is going to help lift the lid, but the fear drives a lot of the emotion in pregnant women. I myself remember driving away from work on my last day, bawling my eyes out in the car going, oh my God, no one's going to remember who I am. In actual fact, they did. But it's the fear. It's not controllable. It's sometimes a little irrational, but it's there. And we need to acknowledge that women are going through this and we want to help them come back to work. So we need people to start talking about this. Okay, so maternity leave and parental leave if you're lucky enough to be able to have some time off as a dad. Salary reviews. So typically, let's say a mum takes 12 months off work, there's going to be a salary review in that period. Do them before they go on that leave. It shouldn't be something that people should be thinking about while they're on maternity leave. They have enough to think about. So have the conversation, manage the expectations before they go so they don't have to think about it while they're off. Expectations on return. Before they go on maternity leave, be really clear about what people are coming back to. It might change, that's okay, but be really clear about what they're coming back to. Write it down so that people have it written down, they know what it is. Coming back to something that's just completely unknown is it drives the emotion and drives the fear, and does mean for some women they just don't come back to work. Increased training and education. So someone goes on maternity leave or dads for a long period of time. Why do their training budgets have to stop? Why don't they increase? Because people aren't naturally learning in the natural workforce every day that we all just learn by osmosis. So why aren't these actually slightly larger for those that are off leave, and try and encourage people to do further education or further training while they're off? Industry connections, so meetups. Going to a meetup at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with a child, a newborn baby, that's impossible. So how can you stay connected to our industry? Going to conferences with a child. I tried it a few times, not successfully. Let alone getting the pram in and out of the conference, but having a screaming child, there are challenges, and you'd be surprised the reaction from an audience similar to this with a child sitting in the corner. So how can we make our industry enable the connection for people that are off on a long period of leave? Company events, so they happen while people are away. It's, again, really hard to attend these things with a newborn baby, and not to mention you're probably sleep deprived. So could the company offer a babysitter or a nanny for a couple of hours, just so that they could come into the office or to the event just for 1 or 2 hours to reconnect with their peers and their colleagues? That 1 hour of reconnection with the professional environment, with real humans, you'll be surprised the impact that has on a mum. Celebrate their milestones. Just because they're off doesn't mean we don't celebrate the normal things we would celebrate. So when they have the baby, stick it in your calendar in 3 months' time to give them a call and say, hey, how'd the 12-week needles go, and how are you going? You made it to 12 weeks. That's a huge achievement. Your child's still alive, and you and your partner haven't broken up, hopefully. So that's something we should celebrate. And then again at 6 months, hey, they're about to start some solids. Engage with your staff who are off on leave. Interact with them on a human level. It's not just about, have I ticked the HR policy box? Did I talk to them at the right times that HR want me to talk to them? It's so much more than that. The childcare transition. So now we're starting to talk about, slowly coming back to work. First day, oh my God, I've got to put my child in childcare. Someone else is going to look after my kid. The emotion. So if you know that this is happening, give them a call a couple of days later and ask them how it went. You'll be surprised, again, the impact this has. Something that was quite totally unexpected for me was the judgment when I came back to work that my child was in childcare 3 days a week. Comments such as, Oh, but they're not one yet. No, they're not. Why aren't they with your mum? My mum works. So again, it's 2018, but here we are still having these kind of comments in the workforce today. Staying connected. So someone's off on mat leave. It's so much more than just one visit into the office. I remember when I first came into the office, it took about 4 days of planning. How am I going to get in there? What time am I going to get in there? When's the baby going to sleep? How am I going to feed the baby in the office? Are all the people that I want to talk to going to be there at the right time? It's really hard work. So maybe the team members, once a month or every couple of months could go out to the mum or dad and visit them at their place. Why do the new parents have to always come into the office? It's really hard work. So how about we think about that being a two-way street? What about a book club? So lots of lonely nights with a baby. Could a colleague support this person who's off on leave and they could read a book together just as a reconnection point? Just something to talk to a professional about other than all the nappy changing. Okay, so now the child's in childcare, yay, you've got to come back to work. Becoming a working parent is tough. I've been doing it for 5 months and I'm just surviving. Definitely wouldn't say I'm thriving. It's a real juggle. Some of the things I think we should think about. Communication. When someone's about to come back to work, it shouldn't be a surprise. There are many stories that I've heard where people come back to work and no one knew they were coming back. Walk into the office and, oh, what are you doing here? Are you coming back? Imagine how that feels for someone who's been out of the office for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Like, oh, you didn't know? What about the person that's doing your job? Oh, they didn't know you were coming back? What does that mean for them? This whole thing happens. So communication, it's very important. The changes at work. So when they come back on their first day, don't dump all that on them on the first day. That's way too much to take in. Think about that transition plan and think about how you can do that over time. Maybe you could have lunch with them a couple of days before. Make that a slower transition than first day. Here's everything that's changed. Good luck. Back to work you go. It's just too much. This is something that I reflect on my time that I wish I had done. Stepping back into a really fast-paced delivery team with over 50 people within the first week of coming back. I missed out on reconnecting with my peers. Some of them I still haven't had a coffee with 5 months later. I wish I had have said, actually, you know what, I'm going to take a month to reconnect with the business, reconnect with my peers, reconnect with the team, and then I'll take on the actual accountability and responsibility of my job. Today I'm trying to do both of those things, and the perception is, oh, Tanya doesn't have time for me, or Tanya doesn't want to talk to me. Well, that's not true, just trying to survive. So on hindsight, I wish I had have said, actually, I think I'll take a couple of weeks or a month to just reconnect and work out how to do this working parent thing. Getting to and from work, I don't know where you all live, but I'm on the Lilydale line and trying to get a car park after 7 o'clock is impossible. So trying to get to work, trying to get the little one, Harrison, to daycare, things go wrong. Poo explosions, vomiting, traffic, or you can name it, right? It happens. But if I don't get him dropped off into the car park by 7 o'clock, I work in Richmond, I can't get to work. So what could you do to help a returning parent? If you've got car spaces, could you offer them up for a month just to help them settle in? Is it really that much to ask to give your staff a car park for a couple of weeks? Could you help the finances if you don't have the car parks available, of a car park that's close by? So just those tiny little things make a really big difference to a new working parent. As I mentioned before, our meetup culture does not support new working parents. And a lot of people coming back to the industry really struggle to reconnect and do the networking thing. So how do we change our meetup culture as an industry? Can we do every second one as a daytime thing instead of a nighttime thing? Maybe we'll get more women turning up to those events if they're during the day. If we've got true flexible working hours, I could go to a meetup during the day and finish off those rest of the hours for the office at home once Harrison's asleep. So how can we shift these things to make it more inclusive for all types of people? Extra sick leave. This has been one of the hardest things for me. I think Harrison's been sick more than not since going to daycare. Those daycare bugs are deadly. And I actually get more sick than he does. So I'm not quite sure what my ratio of attendance at work is, but being the main income earner of my family, I'm conscious that, I'm going to use up all my sick leave probably in the first month of coming back to work. But I'm sick because he made me sick. It's a fact of life. So could you provide some extra sick leave for new parents in the first 6 months just to alleviate some of that stress? Life integration. We talk a little bit about work-life balance. I don't think that's a thing. It's about integration. So how do you get those two things working well together? How do we really be flexible? For me, I work a shorter day in the office. I am lucky enough to have a great manager who allows me to include my time on the train as work time because I can actually be really productive on the train. You'd be surprised how many Slack messages you can respond to on the train. So that's part of my work day, and that means I can go and get Harrison by 4 o'clock and spend a little bit of time with him in the evening before I have to do the nighttime routine and then put him to bed. So that true integration of life and technology is allowing us to make this easier and easier, so be creative. Mother's group. So for those of you that haven't had kids, you get a mother's group from the government that you join, and you may or may not like them, but in my case I did. But now I'm back at work and they're not, so now I'm going to miss out on that. And they're really the people that are probably going to keep me sane. So how do I stay connected to my mother's group? They meet up during the day, they go to childcare play centres, but I'm at work, that's not going to work. Again, flexible working means that, I can go see them in the morning, I can work from home in the afternoon, and I don't have to miss out. It might sound something really small, but being able to continue to have those mums to talk to at 2 o'clock in the morning when Harrison's not sleeping is a lifesaver. Breastfeeding. Okay, well, maybe the more sensitive one. So as a breastfeeding mum, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. I was not prepared for how this would work with work and not prepared for how awkward this would be to talk about at work. Breastfeeding in public, didn't even notice it. Breastfeeding and talking about it at work, whoa. That was weird and awkward and still is to some extent. It's very emotional, but it's for some women, they're really lucky to be able to breastfeed, but working in breastfeeding is difficult. Breastfeeding at a conference, that's interesting. What if Harrison's in daycare and I'm still feeding, but I need to express, when do I do that at a conference? That's interesting. These are all things that are going on with mums trying to get back to work and trying to stay connected as a professional, trying to climb the ladder, continue to be a leader in the industry, but they've got all these things to think about. A lot of organisations these days have quiet rooms or mums rooms. We've got one, but yet I've used it once because every time I go to use it, someone's in there eating their lunch, doing yoga, watching TV, someone took the power cable, so now I don't have any power. All of these things happen, and for those of you that, again, education, if you're expressing at work, it's something that you need to do at an exact moment of time, or things don't quite go well. So what do you do if you can't get access to a room? You've got to go and try it in your car, on the toilet seat, it's not very pleasant. So how is your environment at work set up to enable women to be able to come back to work whilst continuing to be able to do something that is a connection to their child and something that some women are really lucky to be able to do. Say no to social events because I don't want to go to the pub because I can't drink beer because I'm breastfeeding. Oh, but you don't want to socialise. No, but I can drink a Sprite or Coke, it's okay. Oh, but you don't want to have a beer with us? Well, no, because I'm breastfeeding. I was not prepared for that kind of conversation and didn't even think it would be something I would have to be trying to explain and justify to people. Breastfeeding is the single hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I had a really rough pregnancy, but breastfeeding was even harder than I ever expected it to be. the lack of education and the lack of integration back into work and the understanding of what it is. Some of the comments I got, I was not prepared for it at all. So I would like to try and fix this. And eight of the women I've spoken to since coming back from work stopped breastfeeding their child because they couldn't express at work. It's a gift to be able to do that, and it's great for a child to be able to do it, but 8 women, just in my time coming back, had to stop breastfeeding their child because they couldn't express at work. So just have a think about that. Okay, real support from peers. So the general comment of, oh, how are you going? Actually, if I really replied to that answer, how would they be able to respond? Would they be prepared for the truth? How are you setting up our leaders and our colleagues to actually be able to respond to someone that says, actually, I'm really not coping, and how can you help them as peers? The guilt, that's a thing, probably forever. The mummy guilt, oh, here's a daycare, and the professional guilt, oh, I'm going to go home and grab him, or actually, today's my day off and I'm going to spend it with Harrison and I'm not going to respond to anyone on Slack. Juggling both of those things is difficult, and the guilt is a thing. And I encourage you to talk to women about this who are mums or who are thinking about becoming mums, because it does drive the anxiety that I talked about at the start, and it does mean why a lot of women end up with postnatal depression, or they don't have a second child, or their relationship at home struggles with their partner. So it's something we have to talk about. And then there's those dreaded calls from daycare. Whoop, Harrison's fallen over and he's hit his head, you've got to come get him, be here in an hour. Okay, I remember my first one of these, I was actually second week back at work. I had a meeting with our new GM of engineering. I'm walking into the room and my phone rings and it's the daycare. So I'm just going to answer this. Pick up the phone. You need to come get him. It's the new GM of engineering. It's my first meeting with him. He doesn't know who I am. Oh God, what am I going to do? So it's again something on people's minds that are coming back to work. It's a whole nother layer of something to think about. So becoming a working parent is much, much, much more than parental leave and maternity leave. We need to think about the human interactions and the emotions, and we need more people to start talking about this to make it easier for everyone. That's my little boy. My husband's British, so. And yeah, thanks for listening to my talk. That's my little man.